In late 2025, a single comment made in a parliament meeting kicks off a diplomatic crisis that sends shockwaves all across Asia. What came next was a total cascade of threats, economic retaliation, and military posturing that really pushed two of the world's biggest economies right to the brink. So how did one comment light a fuse that big? Well, we're going to connect the dots and break down the whole domino effect of the 2025 China-Japan crisis. And this is the moment the crisis went nuclear, at least with words. I mean, what an incredibly aggressive thing for a diplomat to say. And it wasn't whispered in some back room, it was blasted out on social media for the entire world to see. This wasn't a protest, it was a public threat that was like pouring gasoline on an already smoldering fire. So what could possibly have provoked something like this? To figure out how we got to that point, all we have to do is rewind the clock by about 24 hours. You see, this whole international incident, with all of its economic and military fallout, it can all be traced back to a single sentence spoken in the Japanese parliament. Okay, let's dive right in. We're starting with the very first domino to fall, a comment made by Japan's new prime minister during what really should have been just a routine day in parliament. And there it is, November 7th, 2025. Prime Minister Sanaya Takaichi gets asked a hypothetical question about a naval blockade of Taiwan. Her answer? Well, she explicitly links a Chinese attack on Taiwan to Japan's own survival. For Beijing, this was a massive, massive red line. But to get why this was so explosive, you have to understand that the phrase existential crisis isn't just powerful language, it's basically a key. Yeah, those words have actual power. As you can see, existential crisis isn't just talk, it's a specific legal trigger under Japanese law. So by saying it, Takaichi was pretty much unlocking the door for Japan's military to defend Taiwan alongside its allies. This was a fundamental shift in policy, and one that China saw as direct interference in its own affairs. And that one comment just opened the floodgates. What came next was a full-blown diplomatic battle. But it wasn't fought on a battlefield. It was fought with social media posts, angry summonses of ambassadors, and formal complaints at the highest levels of international government. This timeline just shows how incredibly fast the whole thing escalated. I mean, in a little over 2 weeks, it went from a single tweet to this tit-for-tat summoning of ambassadors, and then all the way to formal letters at the United Nations, with each side accusing the other of aggression. The diplomatic gloves were definitely off. So, with diplomacy clearly failing, China switched up its strategy. The fight moved beyond just harsh words and into real, tangible actions, with immediate, real-world consequences for the Japanese people and for their economy. And the retaliation was comprehensive, hitting Japan on so many different fronts. It was cultural, with films and concerts being canceled. It was economic, targeting huge industries like tourism and seafood. And it was military, with live-fire drills and more patrols around disputed islands, which just dialed up the physical pressure on Japan's defenses. And that economic pain? It was felt almost instantly. China is Japan's biggest source of tourists, so when the government put out a travel advisory, the wave of cancellations was just massive. The estimated cost to the Japanese economy? Over $1 billion. A sharp, immediate economic blow. But the hit to tourism, believe it or not, was just the beginning. China's most strategic economic weapon involved a group of obscure but totally essential materials, the very foundation of modern technology. I'm talking about rare earth elements. So, what is it about these 17 metallic elements that makes them such a powerful weapon in a geopolitical fight? Well, the answer really lies in just how much we all depend on them. To put it simply, rare earths are absolutely vital for pretty much every piece of advanced tech we use. They're in the powerful magnets that drive electric cars, the guidance systems of advanced missiles, and the semiconductors that power our entire digital world. If you control the supply of rare earths, you have a chokehold on global high-tech manufacturing. And this chart right here, it really highlights Japan's strategic vulnerability. You see, after a similar threat from China way back in 2010, Japan did try to diversify its supply chains. But even years later, it still depends on China for a staggering 60% of its rare earth imports. And for some specific types, that dependency is closer to 100%. And that dependency became a very, very real threat in early 2026. China announced it was banning exports of dual-use items to Japan, things that can be used for both civilian and military purposes. This was widely seen as a warning shot, a clear signal that a full-scale embargo on rare earths could be next. And that's a move that could paralyze key parts of the Japanese economy. Now, this whole escalating crisis didn't just happen in a vacuum, right? It forced other countries off the sidelines and into this complex, shifting web of alliances. The world started choosing sides. And wow, the international responses could not have been more different. On one side, you had Taiwan, the whole subject of the original remark, offering just total, unequivocal support. Its president called China's actions a hybrid attack, and the government actively encouraged people to travel to Japan and even lifted food import bans. But on the other side, the United States, Japan's main security ally, was way more cautious. Top officials stayed quiet, and President Trump reportedly told Prime Minister Takaichi to de-escalate, a response that was a huge disappointment for Tokyo. So, faced with this reality, Japan is now making a really bold play for resource independence. It's launching this pioneering world-first trial to mine rare earths from the deep seabed, thousands of meters below the ocean's surface. Now, this is a technologically massive challenge, not to mention environmentally controversial, but it's a bet that Tokyo sees as absolutely essential to break free from the strategic vulnerability once and for all. And this whole crisis really leaves us with a provocative final thought. This conflict wasn't fought with soldiers and tanks, right? It was fought with tourism boycotts, seafood bans, and the threat of cutting off critical minerals. As our world gets more and more interconnected, it really begs the question, are global supply chains and economic dependencies the new battlefields of the 21st century?